Welcome to Karen's Conversations number 14. We're certainly creeping up in numbers, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Em Campbell-Pretty. Now, Em did an excellent presentation at the ITSMF conference in Australia, which was one of the highlights for me, which is why I invited Em to join me on Karen's Conversations. Em is from Context Matters, but I'll throw to Em to introduce herself, her background and what she does. Welcome, Em.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, I'm from Context Matters, and what we do is help large organisations implement what's called the Scaled Agile Framework. So I'm a consultant, ex-general manager, business person, not technology person, and avid blogger and public speaker and more recently author. So that's me.
Excellent, and we'll talk about the authoring in a little while. So your presentation at the conference was called The 12 Habits of Effective Leaders. Mm-hmm. And you kicked off with, and we're not going to have time to cover all 12 habits, so we'll cover some of the ones that stood out for me. Oh. But one of the things you said was lean leaders visualize the work and limit work in process or work in progress. Yeah. So before we discuss that, just for some of our audience who might not know, can you describe what lean is? What's the concept?
So, my view, lean is really the Western world's way of describing what is essentially the Toyota production system. So there were a couple of books written in the 90s, The Machine That Changed the World and Lean Thinking by James Womack, and he described the Toyota production system as a lean system. And when the Western world took hold of that, they, of course, didn't go around telling all their colleagues that they were implementing the Toyota production system. They said they were implementing lean. But for me, and that's really where lean comes from. And I take a view that it's very much a mindset, and very much a leadership mindset, hence the title of that presentation.
Okay, excellent. And to me, lean's all about waste reduction, and I like to think of it from my perspective in service management about looking at some of your processes, and if the activities in the process aren't adding any value, just get rid of them. Absolutely. I see so many overcomplicated processes which feels they've been deliberately made complicated and no one really understands them.
Yeah.
So when you said lean leaders visualize the work and limit work in progress, how do they do that?
So I think one of the challenges in the technology industry is you can't see, right? So all your work is sitting on people's computers, maybe in spreadsheets, maybe in ticket management systems or project management systems or what have you. And it's really hard to see that. So I'm a big believer in physical visualization. So instead of looking at a spreadsheet of 100 projects, let's try putting those 100 projects on index cards and displaying those on a wall somewhere and understanding the state that each one of those index cards is in, so that we can actually see what's going on. It's just so powerful to move from that spreadsheet to that physical visualization in terms of understanding what's going on in your world. And generally the first thing we find when we do that is we have too much work in process or too much work in progress, right? Organizations, just because you can't see, it's really easy to overload people and overload systems. So once you can see it, you can start to manage it, and you can start to actually focus in on what's important. And we know that when we focus in and we do less, we actually get more flow through our system. So more things get delivered, more value gets delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see some post-it notes on the wall behind me. The only reason they're on the wall is that I actually got rid of the whiteboard this week because it was too big. So I'm going to replace it with one on the wall. But at McCann, we're a small organisation, and it was just one day, and I've been talking, to people about lean and agile and DevOps and Scrum, and one day I was just sitting here thinking, I've just got so much on my plate, I just don't know where to start. And it was that, I had a list on a piece of paper, but it was so powerful just putting up all the things that needed to be done and prioritising and saying, this is what I'm doing today. This is the work in process. And then the pleasure of moving things to done and saying, great. It's so, small to medium and large organizations. I think it's such a powerful thing, that visualization, and being able to share that vision. Is this what we should be working on today?
Yeah. So it really helps with transparency, right? So when you're putting up what you're working on, and the people you're working with can see that, and that's so powerful too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're adopting a Scrum perspective as well, and that daily stand-up to say, okay, what have we achieved? What's next? And should we reprioritize? It's really powerful stuff. The other thing you said was lean leaders should spend time at the Gemba. Now, firstly, I know what Gemba means, and I only learned that sort of last year, but explain what you mean by that.
So Gemba, Japanese word, which means the real place. When we talk about going to the Gemba, we talk about going to the real place where the work is done. And again, another practice that comes from Toyota, Taiichi Ono, who was really the father of the Toyota production system, believed in going to the factory floor and seeing the facts. So he would even saw data as a lagging indicator compared to going to the factory floor and seeing the facts and seeing what's actually happening. So if you think about that again in our technology world, it's a bit different because obviously you're not going to see factory workers working on a production line, but if you do have people visualizing their work, these things start to play really nicely together, because you can go and spend time at the place where the work is done with the people doing the work, and if they're visualizing it, then you have something to help guide your conversation. So that becomes very powerful again. But when you start to go to the Gemba, go out on the floor and spend time with the people who are doing the work, you start to understand what their world is like, and as a lean leader, you get the opportunity to help those people help those people with their work, right? What are the things that are blocking them? What are the things that are making their life difficult? And if you're there and you build those relationships, you can say, what can I do to help you? They can give you some challenges to take away, and you can go away and do those things, and that builds relationships, which again becomes really powerful in terms of building great teams.
Yeah, and it's such an important, it's such a simple thing, I'm going to say, but also important. We have an industry colleague in service management, Mark Kawasaki, and he one day, this is a few years ago, he tells the story, he just locked up his office, took his laptop out, locked the office, and he works for a university, and he went and just sat with in quotes, the rest of the business. And he said he learned so much by just doing exactly what you explained. And I don't think he ever went back in his office. He said it was just such a powerful experience.
It absolutely is. I mean, there's just so much going on all the time, and just to be part of it. And, it's not ever that people are hiding things. It's just that if you're not there in it, you can't see it and you can't understand it. And if you're going to, lean leaders support their organisations, if you want to support your organisation, you need to understand what's going on in it.
Yeah. And we so often in IT particularly, we still stand behind that wall and assume that we know what's going on. And those little things that are really annoying the users of IT that we could really fix really quite easily and at little cost. And as you said before, in building that trust and that relationship, it's amazing. We need to stop hiding.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And you also said, that lean leaders create time for innovation. So what does that look like?
I believe that the biggest impediment to innovation is literally time. So we live in this very busy world, and we've already said we've got too much going on. Therefore, we're not taking time out to get better. And if you don't get better, well, you end up like Kodak, right? So you've got to make time to get better. So, I subscribe to Deming's view on this, which is that, the people who do the work know the most about it, and they're best placed to innovate. So if we can give time to those really highly creative, intelligent people who work in our organisations, they're going to come up with more innovative ways of either doing the work that we do, or delivering on products and services to our customers. When we talk the product and services lens, you've still got to validate those ideas with customers. Not all ideas are equal, but that investment in innovation, only takes one little bright idea to change the course of an entire product line or an organisation. So creating that space is just so key. For me, I like to build it into the teams I work with. So, like the Google 20% time you may have heard of, take a team and say, let's take 10% of your time every week, every month, every sprint if you're scrumming, and let's invest that in becoming better. And again, whether that's improving our own work, whether that's training, upskilling, or providing better solutions to our customers.
Yeah. So would you do that at a set time each week or month, or?
I've been a big fan of empowering teams to use that time as they see fit. So if you're a Scrum team, a lot of Scrum teams would work on a 10-day time box. So that's a whole day if they choose to use it that way, or it's a little bit of time every day. I've also known teams to sort of save that up and give themselves a couple of days to do a hackathon or something cool like that. In the end, we want to use their creative mind. So you want to say, what's your idea, and then how do we carve the right amount of time to focus in on that idea?
Yeah. Just describe to the viewers who don't know what a hackathon is.
Yeah, sure. The hackathons, I think, were made famous by Atlassian. The idea is that you take 24 hours or 48 hours, depending on how you feel about it, and you get people in groups to work on ideas that they're passionate about, and at the end of that 24 hours, they present their idea back to the organisation, and it's normally fueled by food and fun and drinks and whatever else. But again, just tapping into that intrinsic motivation of people who are good at what they do and like to do what they do, and just tapping into their creativity and letting them focus on one thing for 24 hours that's in some way going to add value to the organisation.
Yeah, and again, very powerful. I've seen some organisations come up with some amazing ideas through the concept of doing a hackathon.
Yeah.
One of the other habits you mentioned was creating the right environment. What does the right environment look like?
For me, that's the environment in which people feel comfortable. So when I talk about creating the right environment, I really believe that most people are really great people, and they come to work to do a good job. And if you can create an environment in which people feel safe and comfortable just to be exactly who they are, but at work. So you're not putting on this extra mask, you're just relaxing into who you are. The creativity that comes with that. I can remember working with teams that obviously felt very comfortable. Me and my management team were off site for a day, and that team put Ryan Gosling in charge for the day, and then took photos of Ryan Gosling running the daily stand-ups and sent them to the management team. And that's just a group of people who feel really comfortable to be who they are and play jokes and weren't scared in any way. So that's that environment I think really makes for high-performing teams.
Yeah, and how would you go about, especially in organisations where you have totally the opposite sort of culture from that, where, people are afraid to put their hand up and come up with a good idea and scared of being shot down. How do you start to change that culture?
Look, it's got a lot to do with those relationships with those leaders, right? So, if you've got a culture of fear, it is probably a perception of the leadership in the organisation. And sometimes that perception's fair, and sometimes it's actually not. It's really a complete, misinterpretation. I talked about going to the Gemba, and again, it's part of this thing where the leader comes and spends time with the people doing the work on the floor. We start to build relationships. When we build relationships, people start to feel trust. When you take those to-do items for the teams and you follow through and you remove blockers for them, you build trust. When you show your vulnerability in front of your teams. That starts to build trust. So, a team that's comfortable to put Ryan Gosling in charge of of the shop is a team that knows that their leader is comfortable with things being a little bit silly sometimes. And that can be as simple as the first time it's happened to me, I was working with an agile coach who knew I could not catch. As it turns out. I didn't know this till the other day, actually. Didn't know he actually knew that I could not catch. So he sets up, 100 people and me and my team to do this game with tennis balls. And of course, I can't catch. So, I spend the next 20 minutes, chasing tennis balls around a room and everybody laughing at me. But, what does that do? That creates a world in which the people who I worked with went, okay, well, she's a real person. She can't catch. And she gets embarrassed like the rest of us when she can't catch. And again, people start to relax. I often quote, I can't remember if I did a particular presentation, but I often quote Brene Brown, who's a researcher in the vulnerability space, and she talks about the way that humans interact. So the first thing I look for in you is vulnerability, but it's the last thing I want you to see in me. So that's the way we are. So when you show you're vulnerable, that sends me a signal that it's okay to let down my defenses and be vulnerable too.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's all about transparency, isn't it? And and being open and honest about who we are and not hiding behind facades and that people see through very, very easily.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Leaders who are open and transparent with their teams get that in return. And certainly in this agile lean paradigm, what do we want our teams to be? We want them to be really open and transparent with us. So we have to do the same. And if we don't, we can't expect it from them.
Absolutely. Now, and of all the 12 habits that you spoke about, which would be, if you had to pick the top 2?
Oh my goodness.
Like 2 out of the 12, which, and I know we should be doing them all, but to the top of the stack.
Oh boy. Stump me on that one, Karen. Look, obviously, I think the vulnerability thing goes a really, really long way to creating the right environment. If I'd been a little bit more organised, I would have had my list of 12 in front of me and I could be looking at it. Going, I can't remember what the 12 were.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the vulnerability one is the icebreaker, for leaders and their teams.
It certainly makes a difference, because so much of it's about relationships, right? There's my list. I found it. So the vulnerability one, obviously, self-development. I do buy into this premise that if leaders invest in themselves, then that's the thing that helps them grow, and when they grow, the organisation grows. And I think you can't. The leaders I see succeed are leaders who take time to learn. Whether it's go to conferences, read books, what have you. And I think if you're not open to learning, it's very, very hard. That one's really important to me. And probably the other one that's very close to my heart is the one team culture, which is, of course, is where my book, I've written a book on that particular topic. So, I'm obviously very passionate about that.
Yeah. So nice segue to the authoring. So you've written a book, I'm reading this, Tribal Unity, Getting from Teams to Tribes by Creating a One-Team Culture. Now, as an author myself, I always call myself an accidental author because I never meant to write a book. How about you? Was it deliberate?
I don't know if I ever meant to write a book. I can remember this conversation literally 2 years ago, and I was in this workshop with a guy that I knew from the community, and he turns to me and he says, "You should write a book." And I think that was the moment I kind of went, I could probably do that. And then, of course, I did nothing about it for a very long time. But over time, people would say, you should write a book. Okay, I could probably do that. So I just did, move towards that. I think I found that yes, I had a story in the beginning, which is what people were talking about, you should write a book about. But as I found that the story I had was actually a set of repeatable patterns, I started to get the confidence to say, actually, there's something really quite nice about saying, here's a package of repeatable patterns in a single book, and I can give this to you, and you can use this to change your organisation. I'd spent a long time working with organisations and saying, oh, can you just read this blog post I wrote? Just look at this, look at that. But it's not quite the same as being able to go, well, here's actually a package, right? Here's a set of things that work, and they're all there, and you don't have to Google it or anything. You just it's right there in front of you. So that was sort of how it all happened. A few little pokes along the way, and then a little bit of inspiration, and suddenly I'm writing a book. It was bizarre.
So tell us a bit about the book. What who's the audience, and what are they going to learn from it?
So really, I wrote the book with a few audiences in mind. One is there's a whole world out there that thinks that agile and lean, agile's for software developers and lean's for manufacturers and what have you. And I think a lot of agile and lean is really about mindset, and I think there's a lot that we can take from that world and apply to any world. So part of the audience is anyone who wants to create a world of great teams, and in particular, great teams of teams. So, there is a plethora of information about, how to create a high-performing team. There's less information around how to create a high-performing team of teams. So this idea of 100, 150 people who have to work together for some reason, a team of teams. It's also very big in the agile space at the moment to talk about scaling, which again is this idea of teams, and a lot of my experience comes from the world of scaling agile and teams of teams. So there's something in there for that audience as well. So there's sort of the two real audiences that I've been focused in on, and really the book talks about some basics about building teams. If you haven't already got teams as your core unit, then moves into how do we go from those strong core teams to a team of teams that really act as one, right? Succeed and fail together as a single unit. So instead of competing, they're collaborating and supporting each other. And then how key the role of leadership is in making that work, and how do leaders need to behave to foster that world. Talk a little bit of how do you sustain it so you can achieve it, and then how do you sustain that. And finally, I wrote a little bit about the most commonly asked question I get, which is, how do I get my management to buy into this? Is really a look at getting people to reflect in on why they think their management isn't bought in, and what they can do to actually help that, instead of just pushing it back on that leadership to change things. So that's my synopsis of the book.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to reading it. So where could people find more information about yourself and the book?
So prettyagile.com is my blog. So you can certainly find a lot about me there, a lot of my stories there, in various blog posts, links to buy the book, which is also available now on Amazon. Amazon Kindle, iBooks, physical books also available from Amazon. So.
Excellent. So just as a reminder, that's called Tribal Unity, Getting from Teams to Tribes by Creating a One Team Culture by Em Campbell-Pretty. Get your copy now. I'm going to be doing exactly the same. Thank you so much for joining me on Karen's Conversations. I know we've waited a while to make it happen, but it's been a great conversation. I'm sure we're going to get lots of views. So thank you once again for your time.
Not a problem. It's been fun.
So watch out for up and coming Karen's Conversation. We've got some great conversations coming up. Watch this space. Bye-bye.